Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guides podcast. I'm Keaton, and this is.
I'm Kyle.
But first, a word from our partners.
First off, we want to talk about Heather's Choice. If you use the code TheYoungGuides15 at checkout, you can get 15% off of your order. You can find them at heatherschoice.com, or you can go to the link in the show notes, or you can go to our website and follow the link. Go straight to the Heather's Choice site, and you should be able to check out using our code through that. Keaton, take us to the next one.
Our other partner is Lucky Bug Lures. They sell the Bingo Bug, Zombie Max, Fusion Extreme, Lucky Plug, F-Bomb, and Pike Bomb. Go and check them out at www.luckybuglures.com and get yours today.
What's our code for that one, Keaton?
Our code is the Young Guides 15.
For sure. Another partner we want to mention today is Northern Knits, handmade wool knit hats. They're great. Keaton and I both have one. Keep your head warm, look nice. You can have a custom order for your own specific color combo that you want. You can find Northern Knits on Facebook under their page.
And the last one we want to bring up is our friend Matt at Alaska Rod Co. just released a new lineup of rods for the 2022 season. He has some awesome new rods, including both spinning and fly rods. Spinning rods, they have a lineup of 8 freshwater spinning rods with actions and powers for anglers chasing big, aggressive fish. With lengths ranging from 6 foot to 9 foot, there are plenty of options for various applications and styles. In a world full of mass-produced rods, Alaska Rod Co. makes sure that their rods and service provides what other brands cannot. Rod built and tested in Alaska.
Alaska Rod Co. fly rods are built for harsh environments while maintaining the utmost level of craftsmanship. Right now, Alaska Rod Co. has 9-foot fly rods ranging from 5 weights to 8 weights. The 10-foot single hand, switch, and spey rods will be available late this winter or spring. And there's enough rod companies out there trying to build the next lightest and flashy fly rod. But Alaska Rod Co. is here to build you a rod you can pass down to generations. Fishing means many things to many different people. Alaska Rod Co. is honored to build you the ultimate tool that connects you to that meaning.
I also want to just add a little thing on the end of that is I just ordered a rod for Matt and I'm so excited to get it. I ordered a 6 weight 9 foot and I'm going to use it as my sea run cutthroat rod for down here. So, and I think Kyle, did your outfitter just buy some as well?
Yep. Bear Paw River Guides will be guiding this next season with several of Matt's rods. And we're excited to add that into our lineup and put Alaska Rod Co. rods in our clients' hands.
As soon as we get them, I'm going to let you know how they fish, the things I like. We're going to be posting some pictures and maybe hopefully chatting a little bit more about them. I just want to also mention that they're made in the USA. Matt has a great warranty on them from what we talked about. And if you go back to, episode 7, you can hear all about everything going on. So we're very excited and yeah.
Heck yeah, super pumped. Matt's a good dude. We want to support him. He helps us. We want to help him out and get his name out there and get one of his rods into your hands. Absolutely. With that, Keaton, why don't we talk about today's episode?
Today we have Kate Sorenson on. We're very excited to hear about Kate's story. Kate has fished all over the world. Kate has battled some health issues and bounced back and found her way and has really just connected to the outdoors and wildlife and everything around her. So we're very excited to release this podcast, and we hope that you enjoy. Kyle, anything?
I just want to say thank you to everybody listening to today's episode. You can leave us a rating or review. That would be much appreciated. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, great places to let others know who you're listening to and that you like. Listen to us bring on guests every week, or Keaton and I talk to each other. You can also go to our website, theyoungguidespodcast.com, to listen to all of these episodes and to learn more about our guests and to find where you can find our partners online and what promo codes you can use using our links.
Yeah. I just want to also thank you guys for taking the time and listening to our podcast. We have some loyal followers on our podcast, and we just really appreciate you guys. Thanks for giving us great feedback. You can always message us on our Instagram or on our website. And with that said, we're so excited. Here's another episode of the Young Guides podcast.
Let's do it.
Bring it to you. All right. How's it going, Kate? Welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to just get this kicked off?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I am a New Englander. I lived in New England for 30 years. I think it's important for my story to tell you, right from the beginning who I was. I grew up as an elite gymnast, and by the age of 9, I was working out 35 hours a week, and really super intense. And same thing with academics. I was a go-getter, in fact, really obnoxious if I think back and reflect on it, just how many hours I studied. So everything about me was just really competitive and really intense. I ended up going to Harvard for school, and also I ended up being a very competitive springboard diver. I was a 4-time NCAA All-American, a 3-time AAU national champion, and a 2-time world champion in my age group.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really, really impressive, but it was something that didn't make me happy. I mean, I don't want to be dramatic, but I didn't find joy in what I was doing. I started to live in the city after graduating Harvard, and I was an inner city school teacher there. And as someone who really loves to be the best at what they do, I felt for the first time ever in my life I was really bad at something. And so I just kind of had this feeling that I needed to do something different. I was stereotypically very successful, but in my heart I just felt like there was something more.
So what do you do now? What brought you, I guess, now you're in Washington, when you found yourself kind of in that situation there in Boston? How did you get away from that and start kind of changing yourself?
Well, I didn't have a car in the city, and so I just felt super trapped. Felt like I was really far away from nature. And I said, you know what, I need to make a change. And I had a friend at a diving meet introduced me to fishing, and he's since become a mentor for me. But he had me come out to Seattle and coach diving, and I started to fish the area, travel a little bit around the Pacific Northwest, and just hands down, I fell in love. So what I decided to do was literally pick up my bags and move 2,500 miles away to a very, very small town. In fact, the town itself had fewer people in it than the school that I was teaching in Boston.
Wow.
So it was a big change. And I said, you know what? I love fishing so much that I want more of it. I want to live in a place that is, I now live in a place that has 4 lakes and a river fairly close by. So I made the jump and said, I need to be happy. And I'm moving to a place that I have no friends in, and I'll make friends. And so here I am now in Washington State as a math teacher, and I get to fish as much as I want, except for when I'm working.
Nice.
That's awesome. I know that kind of what that like a school, like a teacher's schedule is. My dad was a teacher, so I know you've got weekends and big long vacations. So that's a good job to have if you like fishing.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So you kind of elaborated that you had a mentor into fishing, but what moment was it that you found yourself going, oh, I really love doing fly fishing. I really love, you mentioned you moved all the way over here. Like what was that changing moment that you found? Like, was it a certain fish that you caught? Why, and kind of why Washington? Like, there's Montana, there's Idaho, there's all these cool places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found myself, once I was introduced to fishing down at a diving meet, going back to Boston and literally fishing as much as I could and wherever I could, to a degree that is actually really funny. Like, I would fly fish right next to a highway. I would fish in a place where joggers were, and I'd have to like wait for them to run by, and then I could do my back cast. I found myself traveling on the train system with an inflatable backpack, trying to find fishing areas, or going to Google and trying to find water. But the real moment that I felt like, okay, this is what I want to do, is when I took my calculus class, bunch of inner city kids out to fish right alongside the highway. And I'd never seen kids happy as they were that day. And to feel that happiness, it made me feel like, you know what, the city's not for me. And for these kids to show so much joy in this thing, like, there's something to this sport that makes me happy and that makes others happy. And so I said, I'm going to make a change. And I did.
Nice.
That's awesome. So you left Boston, came to Washington, moved to a small town. What did that whole process look like of like restarting, learning places around you, meeting new people? How did that go?
For the longest time, I felt like everything I did, I compared it to the East Coast. Like, if I went out to dinner, even the servers would look you in the eye or tell you a story, even though you didn't know them. There were different words, different personalities, different politics. And so for the first kind of couple of years, it was just all about comparing, but also rebuilding myself as a person. I had a huge community back in Boston and New England, from diving, from teaching, from high school, from college, from gymnastics. And all of a sudden I moved to a place where I didn't know anyone. And so, besides those differences, I think for me, I realized that everyone wants to help out here and they want to be your friend. And so it just happened supernaturally that I created my own community out here. And now I feel like I have my own family out here too. So it took time, but I encourage anyone who's thinking about making a big change like that, to just trust yourself that you will find people. There's a lot of great people out there, and they want to make connections.
Was it kind of a moving from, you're going from like the city, I mean, you're around a lot of people, I'm guessing, from what you described. Was it a culture shock to come in and maybe like go into places and, it's a different way of life? And I'm guessing in the area, there's probably some hunting and stuff. So you're walking into sportsmen's places or restaurants even. I've been into restaurants in the Eastern Washington. They got like an elk head, up on the wall. How was that for you?
Oh, it was a huge culture shock. I remember my first year teaching, having a phone call from the front office and having a student get dismissed, kind of at the beginning class. And then he came back about 55 minutes later and he was showing all his friends something on his phone. I said, "Oh, what's going on?" He showed me the picture and he's like, "Oh, I just got a bear in my orchard." And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this would have never happened in Boston because, you know, most people are anti-hunting out there. But, you know, I'm glad you asked this question because it was certainly a culture shock, but it was such an easy transition for me because it felt like me. I felt like I was among people who were like me. And like I said in the beginning, I was not happy. You know, when I won Worlds, my feeling wasn't happiness, it was relief. And when I came out here, I finally felt like I'm in the place that is going to make me the happiest I could be.
That's awesome. So it sounds kind of like another reason, like you moved out, but you kind of left all that behind, and you're basically kind of like having a new start and finding a new passion for something that you really love.
Yeah, and I mean, I went head over heels for it. I am obsessed with fishing. I have a room in my house dedicated to fishing. I've been fishing for 6 years, and it would be an understatement to say that I've fished over 400 times during that time. Colleagues used to ask me, did you go fishing this weekend? And now they ask me, what'd you catch, or how was the fishing? I go ice fishing in negative-degree weather. I've gone fishing before work where I'm running onto the dock and into my car to try to get to a meeting by 7:15 a.m. I've hiked 10 miles to try to catch a particular species of cutthroat in Wyoming. Literally my entire Christmas list is pretty much fishing gear. If you look at my YouTube history, it is completely fishing. It is not uncommon for me to drive 4 to 5 hours a day just to go fishing and come back. And I love fishing with people, but I also fish alone quite a bit. You know, I'll drive down what most people would not drive down all by myself. And I do take kind of a GPS just to keep track and be safe. But I am definitely head over heels for fishing.
Being an athlete and like in college and then coming out, do you ever find yourself like when you go fishing with friends competing at all? Like when you're out there, you're like, oh, I got to catch, you know, this big fish, or you guys have like mini competitions?
Yeah, and it's something that I think as a person I'm working on and
Yeah.
actively very aware of it because, like I said, the person that I grew up, you know, I had a lot of happy memories, but I wasn't as happy as I could be. And that's probably because of my excessively competitive nature. I have to actively try not to be competitive. It's kind of like fishing for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And you find yourself posting a picture on Facebook and then saying, well, why did that one only get 75 likes when that person posted this and got 200 likes? So am I competitive while fishing? Yes.
Yeah.
Am I actively aware of it and working on it? Yes, as well.
Nice. Only reason I asked that is because when I got out of high school and then I found fly fishing and stuff, I was very similar in like the act as like once I started getting it down, I was like, oh, I got to go out and I got to catch a bigger fish than my friend, or I got to, I'm always chasing that. Like one of our mottos, like when I was playing football in high school, was chasing perfection. And so I was always chasing down that perfect picture fish, or, and then once I started fishing more, I think you start to realize that there's more to it than just trying to catch that big fish. I think that a lot of people get caught up in the moment of, I need this giant trout, instead of going, oh, look at this landscape I'm in, or, oh, I just saw a deer or a moose, or, oh, look, there's cougars running on the hillside, or, I think a lot of people get so caught up in the fishing and that they forget about the life that is living around them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember I lost my first 3 ever steelhead hookups this year. I was to the point where I was just extremely upset. And then
Yeah.
The next day I did catch a steelhead. I had relief. And I reminded myself, oh gosh, when I won worlds, I felt relief and not happiness, and that's not what you want. You don't want to feel relief.
No.
Why would I feel relief? Why wouldn't I just be happy for my catch or enjoy my catch? And so, yeah, you're totally right. This idea of fishing for the wrong reason. And again, just being aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what your motives are behind it.
Yeah. And I think another thing is you catch yourself scrolling. I mean, we all do it, scrolling through like Instagram, and you're watching, maybe someone catches a fish out of your favorite river nearby or whatever, and they're like, look at this giant fish I caught, and you're like, man, I've been doing this for this many years and I haven't caught something like that, or I haven't caught this steelhead or this giant bass. And it's like, you got to just stop and think, and be like, I've lived in these moments and I've enjoyed these moments. And so I think that like social media and things, other networks have really almost brought like a negative aspect to our sport, but also there's a lot of positive, not just dogging on it, but yeah.
I wonder, what is the purpose of posting fish pictures online?
Yeah.
Is it is my purpose behind doing that to get people to applaud me? Is it to inspire others?
Yeah, I mean, that's stuff I've thought about too. And it's like, am I doing this because, like you said, I want people to applaud me? Do I want people to see that I can catch this one fish? Or sometimes I'm like, maybe I can use it as more like a teaching moment, like talk about how I caught this fish, or maybe the motives behind why I went after this fish a certain way. But yeah, I definitely see where there can be issues of doing it for the wrong reasons.
But
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
I was just thinking, like, when people see a post where I have a tremendously good fishing year, how does that make them feel?
Mm-hmm.
Because in many ways, we're not on the same playing field, right? I paid $9,000 to go fish the Amazon. Some people don't have that money.
Mm-hmm.
I am fortunate enough that I get summers off as a teacher. So I put in 80 to 120 days of fishing a year. And so when I have people post, like, I'm 72 years old, I've been fishing my whole life, and I haven't caught as many fish as you caught this year in my entire life. It's just, it makes me wonder if I'm making people feel bad, because I certainly know that I feel bad sometimes when I see others and what they post.
Mm-hmm. But I think also coming from a positive aspect on this, I think that everyone has different intentions on the way they post. But I also believe that there's good reasons. Not everyone's, I mean, there's got to be people out there that are like, big fish, look what I caught, everyone look at it, give me likes kind of vibes. But I think there's also, this is the other side of social networking, is that you can share experiences, you can teach people how you caught that, you can show them proper fish handling, you can show them these beautiful places. Because like when we talk about conservation, you want to keep these places hush hush, but at the same time, next thing you know, you hear like there's a pebble mine going on it, or something's, this company wants to do this to this or this and this. And it's like, you got to have also people that really care about this to show, you can't get in a year, you can't get thousands of people to come and love that river. Right. So that's kind of the other aspect, is conservation, teaching, like Kyle said, and just a bunch of other, great opportunities.
Those are great points. I mean, I spend so much time looking at YouTube fishing videos that clearly I don't do it because it makes me feel bad. I do it for all those positive reasons.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you're, if you DIY trip somewhere, you want to see how other people had success. And it's crazy, like YouTube and social media, you can almost narrow it down to the time of year that you're going. Like we went last year to fish Montana, and we were like, you go on YouTube and you're like, Montana, river fishing, August 1st through 10th or whatever. And some guy made a video saying, oh, I was hopper fishing August 1 through 10, and I was using this and this, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, perfect, you tie that on, you're catching fish. So that's one of those moments where it's a teaching moment or learning moment or getting you just like, because you don't have that time to spend to figure something out. You're spending that time there, you want to be catching fish. So,
and I'm sure you use it too, Kate, to kind of like have ideas for some of the trips that you've gone on, and kind of given you inspiration on places to go. Have you used it for that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, now I'm all about social media. I'm totally convinced now.
Yeah.
Well, we do agree too. Like there are definitely things that people definitely do it for the wrong reasons, and getting sucked into it can be, for lack of a better word, toxic at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to, am I doing this for the right reason? And we just have to be self-aware and asking ourselves that all the time.
For sure. So go ahead, Keaton.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, so kind of coming back to your timeline, I guess, and coming back and moving over to Washington, starting to build your community, learn more about the fishing. Where was the first place that you fished once you got to Washington? Like, what's the very first fishery you went to?
I think I'd be lying to you if I said a particular place, because I don't remember.
Gotcha.
But I will say that when I came to Washington for the first time, and did that coaching John over in Seattle, and I did a road trip that made me fall in love with the area. I actually fished the little town that I'm currently living in. And so I did this kind of road trip. I did Anilon Lake for brown trout. I did Omak Lake for Lahontan cutthroat. I did potholes for smallmouth. Trying to think of some others. McGinnis for brookies. We literally crushed them. Like, it was the best fishing trip of my life. And my friend Jim, my mentor, he said, like, this is rare, like this is a good week. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm coming to Washington. This is normal fishing. And so I obviously came back, and over time realized how spectacular of a trip that was. It just kind of hit it really well. But it was really a special time that said to myself, this is where I have to be.
So when you did the fishing up there, were you like, oh, I'm coming right here? Or did you like look at other places in Washington before you moved up here?
Yeah, I actually really fell in love with Leavenworth because obviously Leavenworth is gorgeous. And so I emailed every principal from Leavenworth all the way up to like Twist pretty much. And a lot of these schools only have one or two math teachers. And so almost all of them said, no, we don't have a teacher leaving this year, but we'll let you know if we do. But then Manson did have an opening position. And if you Google Manson, Washington, it's a pretty spectacular place. Yeah. So it was a real easy decision for me.
Heck yeah. So how did you start, like once you got here and you went on that initial trip and you had your mentor here, how did you start meeting more people or learning about more places to go and fish in the state?
That's a great question, because I think my answer is going to be way different than you think. I literally just looked at a map and tried various places. I think when you have people online who are constantly wanting to know where you got that fish. The joy for me is going to a place where you have absolutely no clue if you are going to get stumped or you're going to get a 23-pound rainbow. And, things like that have happened to me where I try a lake that I basically just found on Fish and Wildlife website that said, it has brook trout in it, or something like that. And that's all I know. And I make the 4-hour trip and, you have no idea what's going to happen. But the best places I fish have absolutely come from just seeing it on a map and trying it.
That's really cool because a lot of people will see a post on Facebook or on Instagram, like, where did you catch that? I want to know where to go. Or they'll just say, where can I go fishing? Where should I go? When I think a lot of people have kind of lost that kind of sense of curiosity and trying things like that, like just taking a map out, saying, this is a lake, this is a blue line, I want to go, and just go for it. So I think that's super cool.
I completely agree with you, but I think there's also, it's cool, but it's also super effective because a lot of these places are underfished because they're not being talked about. People are talking about Rocky Ford and the Yakima and therefore or the Methow, and it's fished a lot. And people know that, but the places that I explore are not a place that someone's ever mentioned online. And therefore it can either produce no fish or it can be a spectacular fishery or something in between. It's just that surprise that's really fun.
Heck yeah.
So when you were going on your trips, like on some of your destinations, did you do any of that before you moved to Washington, or did that occur once you moved here and started fishing more in Washington?
Like big trips, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that one big trip basically around Washington and then to Glacier National Park before I moved to Washington. But since moving to Washington, I pretty much spend every weekend traveling or every long weekend doing a trip. I've done trips to Canada. I've fished in Arkansas. I've fished in Florida. I've fished Wyoming Cutthroat Slam, Oregon. I mean, any state I drive through, I swear you cannot travel anymore without putting your fishing line in the water. That would literally be a tragedy. In fact, I'm tremendously upset about the places I've visited in my past and didn't fish. Like I visited the Bahamas and I didn't fish it. That is so upsetting, And at the time, I obviously wasn't a fisherman, but I will never travel anywhere ever again without fishing.
Totally agree. I've been, when I went to my in-laws for Thanksgiving in Boise, I was kicking myself the whole time because I didn't pack a rod and fish the Boise River in town. It's like, you have to take a rod, your pack, you got to take everything with you. It can't not go.
You have to. And my parents live near the ocean in New Hampshire. And I just have a float tube there with fins. And so I'll just pack my waders. And so now whenever I visit, I have a couple of bass lakes I like to go to. And, it's just cool to fish a different place.
Yeah.
Totally.
When you go back to the East Coast, do you ever done any like striper fishing or anything?
Yeah. If anyone's listening, my good friend, Captain Mike, he does striper fishing, and he's just as good as they get when it comes to captaining a boat, fishing guide, and just a solid person. I think it's Ipswich Bay fishing or something like that, Ipswich angling. Striper fishing is where I became an extremely good strip setter. I really learned to fly fish on lakes and in the ocean. And so you won't see me setting up like that. You'll see me strip setting. So I have had phenomenal fishing days, striper fishing. You see the birds come, you see the boils, and it's a blast. I mean, that is definitely something, if you ever travel to the East Coast and you hit the timing right, it is fun, really strong fish.
It's always been something I've wanted to do. So Keaton, you and I are gonna have to go check that out sometime.
It's on my bucket list. I want to do that, and I want to, like, if we go there, I need to go south, and I need to go catch a tarpon.
Yeah.
Have you done?
I did do tarpon. I feel like, it felt a little bit cheesy because there were boats in this lagoon, and a lot of bait fishermen and stuff like that. But I'll be honest with you guys, I am not the most patient of fishermen. So I think the steelhead fishing and the tarpon fishing is kind of maybe a one and done thing. Although if I'm there, I'll do it. But I would rather catch smaller fish with guarantee of doing it. It's just kind of where I've gotten to be in my fishing career.
I've had weekends going out, like, you go out or for the day or a weekend, you're going steelheading or you're going out trying to catch a certain species, and it doesn't end up happening. That happens a lot just because of the number of returns that we have. I mean, I've made a couple like day trips, 2-3 hour drive. You go up there, you fish hard, nothing happens, or it dumps rain. The worst is when, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but when you drive somewhere and the weather changes and does something that's not supposed to do, and then as you're standing there, this just like chocolate milk just comes rolling past your feet, and you're like, man, I drove 3 hours to get to this point, and now I have to drive 3 hours home for an hour of fishing. So that really sucks.
But at the same time, that's what makes fishing so great, is that unexpected.
Yeah.
You're driving somewhere, you have no idea, if the river's going to be blown out or if you're going to have the best fishing day of your life. So it's that excitement that I really love.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and that's what you got. That's the reason it's not called catching. It's fishing. So let's start moving into like a different subject a little bit. Going back to that like culture. Did you find yourself doing anything else? Like, I know you do fishing. Did you get into like the hunting culture? Do you like doing the backpacking kind of thing? Did you do that before you moved out here, or was that as you got here?
So when I lived in Boston, I was diving and teaching at the same time. So I would get out of work around 3:30 or however early I could. I'd walk a mile to the train. I'd take a train for 1 hour. I'd then walk a mile to the pool, train for 2 to 3 hours, walk a mile back to the train, get on the train for an hour, get back to Boston, walk a mile back to my house. And so if you want to know if I had hobbies in Boston, the answer is no, unless it counts as,
Ride the train.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I think that led a little bit to my unhappiness, is that I had to find my hobbies, right? So in Washington, I started a drone club at my high school. Nice. And so I got really into video editing and drone flying. And so I did that with the kids for a while, which was really fabulous. And then I have gotten into hunting, although it turns out I'm really bad at it. Or more so that it's significantly harder than fishing.
Yeah.
I'm left eye dominant, but right-handed. So it's a little bit of a struggle for me with shotgun, but I go do skeet, and I go to the shooting range. I have a shooting range in my backyard. I practice with clay pigeons. Got my first turkey this year. I've gotten some quail, but I would say I probably get skunked 2% of the time in fishing, but for hunting, it's like 95% of the time I get skunked. So I really like it because I went muzzleloader hunting for the first time this year, and I got to be within 10 feet of deer. You might say, Kate, why don't you have a deer? But that's a different story for another podcast with probably tears. But just like, being around animals at 5 a.m. where you would otherwise be in bed. That's the part of hunting I really like. I have really got into ice fishing. I'm absolutely obsessed with ice fishing. Certainly fly fishing is my number one, but I needed to do something on the kind of the off season. So I do that, and I'm trying to think of other hobbies. I've been told I have too many hobbies and need to cut them back. So I think those are my main ones.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So I know you were talking earlier kind of how maybe tarpon fishing and steelheading that you didn't necessarily think that would be something you might come back to. Can you kind of do you kind of see a parallel between like hunting for a steelhead or a tarpon and comparing that with like hunting for an animal, as in things that are maybe not as enjoyable, I guess, because you don't have that kind of success rate. You don't have as much joy doing that.
I think I'll be a little bit vulnerable here, but I think a piece of it is to get a picture of it and feel like you've done it, if that makes sense. I feel like the same thing is true for hunting for me, especially for big game. This idea of I just want to have one picture with a big deer, or I just want to have one big steelhead. And I found that like I really didn't enjoy the whole hunt for the steelhead. It was just seemed to me that I wanted the picture, or I wanted to say that I've gotten one. And, I've brought this up a few times during the podcast, but you have to stop and ask yourself, am I doing this for the wrong reason? And that's clearly a time when I was. And so I just have to push back on myself and say, I'm going hunting because I love nature. Mm-hmm. I love the challenge. I'm going fishing for a number of reasons, which we can talk about later, but just being cautious that you're not going tarpon fishing or steelhead fishing because you just want that picture, or you want to say you've caught a big one.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Like,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like this year, when I moved to Alaska, new area, never lived up here, never hunted up here, and I like to hunt ducks in the wintertime. And I was going to places and I was not shooting. I shot like 2 ducks the entire season. And I was like initially like really bummed, or I'd hunt all morning in the cold and I'd be all bummed out. I'm like, man, why I'm just not having fun. Why am I still doing this? But then I had to think, like, one morning I saw 2 foxes and I thought they might have been grizzly bears in my headlamp. And when I saw 2 sets of eyes, I have, like you said, you're getting close to deer. I have ducks land 5 feet away from me and I'm standing in the puddle on 5 minutes before daylight. Like it's those things that you kind of have to realize, like things you have to kind of find some enjoyment of and like understand while you're doing it, and not wanting to just shoot a bunch of ducks and get a picture of some ducks or catch that one fish. And that I like what you said. You're like trying to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
And to kind of add on to Kyle, I think that when there's a part that you can't describe when you harvest an animal. I mean, like catching fish, you catch fish, you can get them in the net, you take your pictures, drop them out, they swim off. But like there's something, and I think until, if anyone is listening to this, or, even you, like when you start harvesting like a big game animal, eventually, if you do, there's just something about it that's just like you almost, the way I describe it is I've never felt closer to nature than that moment. What would you say, Kyle?
No, I would agree. There is nothing comes close to coming to that moment where you know that you are taking something's life and you're then going to use it to better yourself, which is in a way, which is different than fishing, even different than bonking a fish and keeping a fish. It's just something that brings you a lot closer and lets you know that you're doing it for the betterment of you, whether that's filling your freezer or using parts of that animal for various things.
Well, and I don't know about you guys too, but I also feel like I've grown to have an appreciation for it. Almost makes me appreciate everything in that cycle of life, instead of just that, just the deer. Like if I harvest a deer, it's not just like, oh, I love this species of deer. It's like, oh no, like I love that the things that hunt it down and track it, or I love that this drinks from the water that the fish live in. Like I feel like I have, everyone talks about maybe river conservation, save our fish, but it's like, man, that water also gives water to so much more life, trees and the animals that drink from it. And so I think that, at least in my eyes, in my heart, that I feel like I have more of an appreciation for everything in nature.
Yeah, some of the best hunters I know are probably the most pro animal I know of anyone.
Yeah. For sure. You got to appreciate, and you got to take care of your resources around you. And this is where everything that we've talked about tonight, we could all loop it together, with our social media and with, people and our hunting and our fishing. It's just, we all got to take better care of, if you enjoy doing something and you harvest something and then that ends up disappearing later on in life because we didn't care about what was around it. So I think that's why a lot of the hunters and anglers that you may see or be around that really appreciate animals and appreciate life, it's because we're trying to take care of it for future generations. That's a long way to describe it, but that's how I feel. So
It's well said.
yeah.
Sure. So Kate, one of the things that you brought up, and something that we've shared on our social media about you, and that would initially kind of got us interested in having you on the podcast, was some of the destinations and the trips that you've gone on and the species you've been able to catch. What, I guess, first off, and you said some of these, but where have you gone, and like what made you want to go chase those species in those locations?
I spent a month in Iceland for photography and also for fishing. And Iceland, that was the most humbling experience of my life, because I fished different rivers and that I'd never fished before. And usually it takes a while to figure out a fishery. And I struggled a little bit, honestly. But because I put in so much time, I did get some gigantic brown trout and Arctic char. I remember a particular Arctic char that I tried on like 7 different dry flies before it took it. And, the feeling of finally hooking that fish and your heartbeat is just so fast. So Iceland, I went to before, and I just was drawn back there because it's a spectacular place. You are so aware of the earth when you're there because it's boiling. I fished rivers there that were heated because of geysers. It was just a phenomenal place, with the exception of the food, which was actually terrible. I was fortunate enough to fish Puerto Rico this year, and I did a guided trip for tarpon, and I was successful. But I also went out on my own in a kayak and basically fly fished and caught my first snook and tarpon on my own without a guide. So that was really super cool. I have fished up in Fortress Lake, Canada. Highly recommend it. Extremely cheap for what you get. They fly you in BC, Canada. Some of the biggest brook trout in the world. And it's not one of those fishing trips where you catch like 3 fish a day. It's more like, okay, I've caught 50 today. I can go home and, have a beer. I have fished Wyoming Cutthroat Slam. That was spectacular. And that was, one of those trips you just don't expect to do that great because you don't know the fishery. It was like every day was amazing fishing. And I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but I would go back to Wyoming over Montana any day just because the fishing was spectacular and it's just not as well known. I also went to Fortress Lake. No, sorry, I said that one. I went to Amazon Rainforest, and that's just a trip of a lifetime. I had several friends go with me, and they were the ones that said, "Hey, this has been a dream of ours forever. Do you want to join? And the answer was absolutely. And not only was it an amazing fishing trip, but I got to fish with Kayapo Indians. And these are people who live on the river and have never seen a supermarket their entire lives. They speak a language that only, a couple hundred people know. They live off the land. They go to their supermarket, which is jumping in the river and grabbing a turtle. And so the fishing itself was just world class. I mean, catching giant 80-pound catfish and haku and huge wolffish. And man, I caught some really good peacock bass. And it was a big numbers game as well for that, but it was, really good company, great guides. And for what I got, I really felt like the price was reasonable for that. So that was called Kenjam, Kendjam. And those are the ones that stand out to me. I'm trying to think of some others, but it's tough. I really feel like I do guided fishing when I'm in a location that I don't know. But for the most part, when I said I fish over 400 times in the last 6 years, I'd say 97% of that is without a guide, just kind of local areas.
Yeah, trying it out and testing it.
Mm-hmm. So real quick, what made you want to go to some of these places? Like what was your drive to go to I guess you said you went to Iceland for photography as well, right? What brought you to some of these other places though? And like, I want to go here. Did you want to chase a specific trout? Was there a certain type of fishing you wanted to do, or how did that work out?
I'm totally driven by good scenery. I mean, anytime I think about where I want to go on vacation, it always ends up being an extremely cold place that I find beautiful. So for me, foremost, it was for the culture or for the beauty of where it was. And then obviously gigantic peacock bass and gigantic brook trout, and things like that. That's really pretty tempting too.
Gotcha.
I'm currently looking to do a fly fishing trip up in Canada this summer, and I'm trying to narrow it down to, I want to do pike fishing mainly and lake trout on fly. And you really have to make a decision sometimes between really good scenery and maybe the fishing's not as good, or big pike with a lake that I don't find quite as attractive, super flat, and so it's a combination of all that.
Well, and for like lake trout and for your pike, when you're going to make that trip, timing's a big thing too. Making sure you're at the right time of the year and they're not super deep or lethargic or anything of that sort. So that's going to be a fun trip.
Yeah, they say ice out's actually a really good time, and it's fun. Just the research part is fun. I said in the beginning I was obsessed with fishing. And when I'm trying to find these locations, it just becomes a YouTube search and a Google search and emailing people. You're spending a lot of money and you want to get something that fits for you.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned pike and like and lake trout. You should put tiger muskie on your to-do list too.
Okay.
Yeah, tiger muskie is, from what I've heard, it's just insane. I have a good friend of mine who does it, and he catches them, and he's told me that he's blown up a couple rods on the side of the boat because when you hook them, they just come like charging straight at the boat and underneath it. And like once the rod goes, it's going. You're not getting it back. So, and that's what that's what I've heard through a lot of people saying that when you get into a big tiger muskie, like they're powerful fish. So you mentioned kind of pike, and I think that if you want to try that stuff, you definitely need to put a tiger muskie on your to do. So,
this stuff pumps me up. This idea of talking about future trips and future fish. This is what life is, you guys. This idea of what can we do next? What's gonna make us happy or challenge us next. It's super cool, and that's why I love fishing so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives you a reason to kind of get after the next step and where you want to be and where you want to go.
Yeah, but all while appreciating things like going to a small waterfall and catching 8-inch trout on tenkara rod. Just because I've caught really big fish in the Amazon rainforest, you still got to appreciate a gorgeous trout, or just the different varieties. Appreciate lake fishing, appreciate river fishing, appreciate ice fishing, spin fishing. I mean, it's all amazing in its own little story, whatever it is.
Yeah, you can't get caught up in the big fish moments. You also got to appreciate the little fish moments too, or a red band in a small creek, or a small brook trout, or anything. I mean, I think people forget that there's also beauty in the smaller things in life as well. Yeah.
And so what you were saying, Kate, what are some of those goals that you have for yourself, or some of those trips that really pumps you up? Like, you mentioned a couple, but is there any like that you have that you might not be able to achieve in the next year or two, but maybe 5-10 years down the road you might want to go do, or maybe something closer to home that you want to do in the near future?
Oh, for sure. So for ice fishing, I want to catch a burbot under the ice. That's my ice fishing goal. For fly fishing, I want to catch a coho on the fly. I want to catch a really big bluegill as well, like something that bluegill really pound for pound, they fight really well. So I'd love to catch a really big bluegill. I'm kind of stuck at the 3 to 4 pound bass. I'd really love to catch like a big 5-6 pound bass on a popper at night. I love popper fishing. I think it's super cool. And, the one thing I haven't gotten into is kind of that warm water fishing. And I'm not sure if I'm good enough yet to catch a bonefish in heavy wind and the guide point and say you have to cast exactly 47 feet at 10 degrees. I'm not sure I'm there yet, but I certainly feel like that's on my radar for down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
So you mentioned to me kind of, and I want you to go on and elaborate that. You mentioned that like after a trip, there was a pretty rough patch in your life. And how did that moment make you appreciate life even more than you did so before?
Yeah, I got really sick in August. I had 104 fever for an extended period of time. I was having really bad night sweats to the point where I actually had to change my clothes in the middle of the night and actually change beds. I was having extremely low blood pressure. My kidney and my liver were failing. I passed out in the shower. I was having an elevated pulse despite the fact that my blood pressure was so low that I should have been passed out. And this is for an extended period of time. And I'm a really healthy, athletic person. But I lost 20 pounds within 2 months. So I got very ill. And I did everything necessary to try to figure out what it was, right? I did a lot of blood tests. I did urine tests. I did ultrasounds and all that jazz. And it was a long haul. And unfortunately, it was so long that it was enough time that made me panic. To the point where I didn't tell anyone, but at night I was dreaming about dying, dreaming about having cancer. I contacted someone to do my will. I even talked to people about, like, if I were to die, could you take care of this for me? And it's interesting that when you are faced with something like that, it wasn't emotional for me. It was more practical, meaning like, here's what I have to do if I'm going to die. And the first thing I thought of, literally the very first thing I thought of when the doctor told me your kidney and your liver are failing, and that's not normal for someone like you. I thought, well, I've got a few years left to live. I'm going to quit my job. I've got enough saved in retirement. I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to fish. I'm going to go down to Patagonia because I can't as a teacher right now, given the seasons. I'm going to go fish New Zealand. I want to go catch a marble trout in Europe, all these things. And it was interesting to me that my first response to something as crazy as I might die at age 34 was, well, then I might quit my job and fish the world. And so, I kind of had this existential crisis of, why is that my response? Why is it that when faced with something as scary as death, my idea of living the best life possible for myself would be to fish the world? What is it about fishing that makes me so happy? What is it about fishing that makes you feel like you're living the good life? Mm-hmm. And so I'm really happy to report to you guys that I am doing much better. My kidney is in good shape. My blood pressure is good. My weight is stabilized. I'm still dealing with some issues with my liver is still not ideal. And the doctors, with the ultrasound that my parents drove me to, they flew out from Boston. Can you imagine being a parent driving your kid to an ultrasound to find out if they have cancer? I'm proud to say that I did not have anything life-threatening that came from the ultrasound. So although I'm actually still kind of grappling a little bit with this, and they do think it was probably dengue fever or something related to South America, we don't know for certain, and I'm still monitoring my health. But I'm no longer going to quit and travel the world and give up my retirement money.
Nice. But do you feel like after you've experienced that and you kind of had that scare, do you feel like there's like a drive inside you that tells you that you need to go out and live life even more than you are right now? I mean, you seem to be doing a lot of stuff, but do you feel like, oh, I need to, like, instead of like, maybe I'll go, it's more of, oh, I'm going kind of moments now, or what?
Well, I feel like I actually have to caution myself in doing that, because you don't want to feel an obligation to have to go out, because then if you do it no longer feels like something that you enjoy. I know there's a lot of like YouTube creators who probably feel the urge to have to get out there really regularly. So no, I don't feel like I have to do that. But what I think I got from it was just an understanding of why I fish, because we've talked about this, but there's so many reasons why not to fish, and I've been asked this question by my family and by others, like, God, Kate, like, you're obsessed. Like, what's the deal with fishing? And I could never answer that question before. I mean, I felt I did, but I don't think I did a great job. I would say I love nature. I love being with family and friends while fishing. I love the excitement of a big fish, or the excitement of not knowing what's going to happen. But because I fish so much, I asked myself that question, why do I fish? But I never had a good answer. And now I feel like after having this health scare, I do have a good answer. And that answer is, I feel alive when I fish. I feel like I'm living the good life. Compared to my life in the city when I was extremely competitive and driven to be the best person I could be, I feel so much happier than that. And there's nothing more than feeling like you're alive and feeling like you're happy. There's nothing more than that, period. And so that's what it brought me to. Certainly an appreciation for my own life and what I'll do with it. And also, those listening to this, there are many people that the listeners know and that you guys know that are not as lucky as me. Right? I think we all know people who saved retirement money, but never got there. who dreamed of going to Brazil, Amazon rainforest, but never got there. Right. So it's a good way for me to remember why I fish. It's a good way to remind me what makes me happy. And to also just appreciate every second that we have here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate you sharing that with us, Kate, and we're glad you're doing better and things are looking good and you've got better understanding. So that's awesome. Well, we've taken up quite a bit of your time, Kate, and we appreciate the conversation we've had with you. We don't want to take up too much more of your time, but we do have a few final questions, kind of a rapid fire round. But before we get there, is there anything that you feel like we haven't asked you that you really want to share about your passion for the outdoors and what you've done?
I think what I'd like to do is, first of all, declare that I'm not an expert fisherman. I feel like sometimes I might come off as sounding like I am. I think that's from the teacher side of me, where I have to sound like I know everything. But I want to let you know that I'm extremely humble in what I know for fishing. Like I don't wait on my back cast. I know 3 knots. I don't tie that many flies. I could probably only name 15 flies. I'm just not an expert. But what I want to give a little bit of advice, specifically because I'm not an expert. Mm-hmm. Because I think that a lot of anglers get discouraged because they're getting advice from very, very good fishermen. And so I just have a little bit of advice for people who would also declare themselves as not experts like I do. And so that first one would probably be to get a mentor. My mentor, Jim, has been invaluable to me. He's currently the advisor for the fly fishing club at the University of Idaho now. And he just takes serious pride in bringing beginners into the sport. So find a mentor. Without Jim, I would not have caught as many fish and probably wouldn't have stuck with the sport. Fish as much as possible. I mean, literally, I catch a lot of fish because I fish a shit ton. People declare themselves as like on their about me page on work, they'll say, I'm interested in fly fishing. And I say, oh my God, you are? Like, when did you fish last? And they're like, well, 2-3 years ago. Right. So, if you're complaining about not catching a lot of fish, it's because you're not fishing. Right. And you learn so much by making so many mistakes. So get out there as much as you can. Try different things. Like if you're not catching fish, if you're stripping small strips, try big strips. If you're stripping slowly, try fast. If you're shallow, try deep. If you're casting in this place, try casting in a different. If you fish there in the morning, try fishing there in the evening. Right. So, I've had so many times when I am reeling in really fast to end my day because I got skunked and I catch a fish. And I hadn't tried that, I had times when I'm trying a run again where I drag my fly up a run, which is not fishing, but I hook a fish, So you got to just kind of work with that and try different things. I have a fishing journal. Take a picture everywhere you go because every time you fish, even if you're skunked, take a picture because maybe 3 weeks later you go back to your journal, go back to your pictures and fill in what you fished with, how you did, what the weather was like. So the next following years, you can get inspiration. And just explore, right? Don't look for other people to tell you where to fish. Find your own places.
Yeah, that's really good advice for new anglers, and I think that, like you said, you can't catch fish if you're not out there. So that's a big one. You think it wouldn't be, but that is a big one.
Yeah, people are like, why don't I catch so many fish? I'm like, well, how many times do you fish?
Once a month or something like that. It's like, well, maybe go like once a week or. Yeah.
But I'm very fortunate that I'm able to fish so much, and so there's a little bit of that fortune that I have that others may not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always think about the meme, or it's not even a meme, but some of the things that you see, there's like oh, I'm an expert fly fisherman and I catch a lot of fish. And it's like, oh, you are? It's like, yeah, I go to Alaska once a year for 3 days. Well, that's a little different.
That's my other piece of advice. You want to be a great fisherman? Well, go where there's amazingly big fish. Like it's, as a coach, I talked to an Olympic diving coach once. I said, what's the key to being an amazing diving coach? He said, oh, just get really good athletes. So what's the key to catching really big fish? Go to Alaska, go to Brazil, go to places where there's good fish. And so, when we talk about Facebook, you keep that in mind, right? Some people are fishing in some privileged areas, but take pleasure in catching those smaller fish in those local waters. If you don't, then sport's probably not for you.
Yeah. Don't let trips. I think a lot of people will go on trips and they'll let it ruin them. Like, oh, I went to Alaska this summer and I caught, every cast I caught 26-inch rainbows or something. And it's like, well, when you come back, you're not going to get that same, in Washington, you're going to have to work for maybe a fish half that size. So like, in the moments that you do catch bigger fish in 20s, it's like also enjoy those as well.
I agree. Yeah, it took me 3 years to catch a fish over a rainbow over 18 inches. And then it took me about 5 years to get over 20, 23 inches.
Yeah.
But I guess all I had to do was go to Alaska.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Well, cool. We're coming. That was great advice, and I think that we're coming into our rapid fire round, which is like me and Kyle's like favorite thing about the podcast. So I hope you're ready for this. Kyle, you want to take it away?
Yeah, let's do it. So, first question for you, Kate, is what is your favorite fish and your favorite animal to hunt?
Favorite thing to hunt, definitely turkeys. Favorite fish, largemouth bass.
Nice. What is your next? I mean, you've done a lot of dream destinations and stuff, but what's your like next big destination or your kind of bucket list trip?
I'm gonna go up to the Yukon and try to target lake trout and pike on fly.
Nice. What is your favorite meal or snack and your favorite drink to take with you when you're hunting or fishing?
Favorite snack is definitely just like a bag of Ghirardelli chocolate. I definitely eat badly on fishing trips, and drink for sure. A cold beer after the day is perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're on your way out the door. You're getting ready to, go on a long journey, and you throw in, you're getting ready. You're trying to find that playlist. What's your go-to music for your trip?
Silence. I like to just think.
Nice.
Yeah, and when I'm in the car with friends, sometimes they make a note like, "Hey, we just drove 6 hours. We didn't put the radio on."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the best conversation, especially like when you're on long drives and you're just chatting with people. Makes the day go by a little quicker than trying to listen to music, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
You're headed out the door and like you're going fishing and you're just dead set on going. What's the first thing that you're grabbing as you're headed out the door? Like something you can't leave the house without.
Black woolly boogers with green flash.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I fish a lot of lakes, and so black woolly boogers, both weighted and unweighted. That's the first thing I grab, and the first thing I forget is always the net.
Nice. Here we go. Advice going to new people coming in the sport or industry, like people that just want to get into going fly fishing. What would you tell them to do?
And we know you've already kind of touched on this, but if you had anything else you want to elaborate on.
Yeah, don't trust people that the sport is super complicated. I've gone on fishing sites where they say you need 4X, 7.5 feet long. It's like, oh my gosh, get over yourself. Like, just put your line in the water. So just because there are a lot of people that overcomplicate it does not mean you need to. Just learn a few knots, uni knot, double surgeon, and perfection loop are the 3 I know. And that really gets you by.
Awesome.
Heck yeah. Well, that kind of wraps up our rapid fire round. And with that kind of wraps up our conversation for the night, Kate. So we appreciate you being on and sharing your story and how you got into the outdoors and kind of your whole life journey. So we appreciate having you on.
Yeah,
Well, thank you
for taking the time.
Appreciate it. And I do want to also thank you guys. I don't know if you hear this often, but as you guys being fishing guides, when I talk about fishing being something where I feel alive or it makes me happy, you're a part of that when you are taking clients out, be it a beginner or someone has been fishing their whole life. So just make sure you realize that you are a part of that in other people's lives. And I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
That means a lot.
Yeah, we appreciate that. All right, Keaton, you want to take us out of here?
All right. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Young Guides podcast. We just want to give another thank you for Kate for taking the time today and coming out to talk to us. Make sure to go check out our partners and make sure to check out Lucky Bug and Heather's Choice. They got some great deals and they still have some great deals after Christmas. So make sure to go to their website, check it out. And that was another episode of the Young Guides podcast. And once again, I was Keaton.
I'm Kyle. We'll catch you on the next one.